Hey, Doom Wizard here. Today's August 18th, 2022. Are you watching Garand Thumb, Climate Town, Simon Clark? Do you know our current global average temperature? Does it really matter to you? No. We're just focused on survival. I too can also skin a rabbit, grow food kinda, and do some close quarters combat. I am from Texas, and I'm pretty proficient with a handgun and a shotgun. So, you may not be aware, but the Arctic is in a death spiral. At some point within the next 2 decades, it's going to melt, and it's going to be ice-free. And you know the consequences of this climate town. You went to school for your PhD in climate science, right? Right? So there's this gaslighting that appears to be going on within the scientific and public community at large, and for some reason, these scientists think that we live in a vacuum, and we can just change things quickly. I mean, look how long it took for this climate legislation package to go through, which is, in historical standards, the largest climate package to ever pass, but it took more than 2 years, way more than the allotted time. When we need rapid, widespread reduction of emissions, we need them now. All of them. Nitrous, methane, CO2. Hell, draw down the water vapor too, if you can, but we can't. Okay? More babies are being born. More cars are on the road. There's more commercials, advertisements, sports, bowls, you name it. We're not stopping any of this. Like, the world leaders don't really see the threat that's coming within the next 10 years, because if they did, they would do everything in their power to change it, but they're not going to be around. They want to line their pocketbooks. There are no more authentically democratic institutions left in this country. Primaries coming up ain't going to change a goddamn thing. We need a rapid transformation of our entire way of being, our entire way of life, both inside and outside change. So this is a follow-up, a preface video to, get to the point, right? This is a preface video to aerosol masking. I'm going to do a whole video on it, and the short version of it is it's a regional effect, and most primarily concerning is over the northern hemisphere when we stop industrial activity over the next 2 decades, because clearly we're not doing it now. We're going to keep building, keep drilling for new oil and gas pipelines as clarified in the most recent climate legislation. We're just going to keep pumping out, okay? An increase of emissions by 2030, not a reduction. They're trying to lose 20 pounds when we got to lose 100, okay? So we're on acceleration off the cliff, but there's this gaslighting among the scientific and public community that somehow we're in the fault. For being realists, we get painted as those with terminal illness or post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever term you want to put on it. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to read the footnotes of the article that I'm going to read for my next video, and you'll see why this is important in a moment. Doomers, sometimes called gloom and doomers, catastrophists and doomists, are trending in terms of climate science communities. They're used here in a descriptive and not pejorative sense to refer to those who see no way out of the current predicament, have begun to argue that any action to remediate the situation is futile or hopium, as we're headed for inevitable catastrophe. This is a dangerous thinking of air policy that generates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Many in the climate community have been suffering with increased depression and climate anxiety due to the sheer mass of negativity, extremely dire data they are confronted with on a daily basis. Those who are experiencing hopeless, otherwise known as clinical depression or PTSD, have become overwhelmed, should seek help and guidance. Having no hope is a pathological and dangerous condition, according to psychiatrists at Psychology Today. Clinically speaking, despair and a lack of hope is a symptom of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes, that's the worst kind of PTSD. At this time, we should all be especially aware of doomed despair, also known as survival despair. Individuals with this form of despair presume that their life is over, that their death is imminent. The ones most vulnerable to sinking into this particular depression are those diagnosed with a serious life-threatening illness as well. Those who see themselves worn out by age or infirmity. Such individuals feel doomed, trapped in a fog of irreversible decline. In popular culture, some are now distinguishing between a near-term human extinction, a doomer, and a gloomer as well. It is worth noting that scientists commonly refer to immediate, unpredictable changes and abrupt nonlinear change. Near-term human extinction is not academically preferred terminology, has begun to signal fake news and pseudoscience. That was a fancy way of saying, if you are thinking with a logical and rational mind about our trajectory and current circumstance, then you must have PTSD. You have the problem. Okay, let me tell you what I saw yesterday. Yesterday, I saw a young man, about 22 years old, wearing a Trump 2024 shirt. Trump, as we know, is an avid climate change denier and funded by the very pockets of the oil and gas industry at large. And so what happens when you have, this is what happens when you have a society in collapse, in decay. People, young and old, gravitate towards populist leaders to make sense of the disorder and chaos that they are experiencing. Otherwise known as collapse, which we are now in, baby. We are in collapse. So, what I wanted to just clarify is this nonsense that somehow we have to reorganize our whole civilization in the next few years, tell Trump kid, about climate science and inform him about the dangers that are facing him and us in the future. And even if we did, the aerosol masking effect is shielding us from about 0.25 to 1 degree Celsius, give or take. It's understudied, okay? We don't know exactly what regions would be affected most. But let's say, just hypothetically, and the world leaders don't seem to understand this because they want to drill and have more shipping routes in the Arctic, that the Arctic is affected in the next two decades with reduced industrial activity. Aerosols fall and the Arctic is already warming up 4 times faster. Then it gets an extra spike of warmth because the aerosols have fallen. And that in turn speeds up Arctic permafrost fall. That releases more methane into the environment, as if it already isn't skyrocketing off the charts. You can go check the methane levels recently, and we're going up. How's that going to be fucking good? Climate Town. How do we navigate adding at least 0.3 degrees Celsius to where we already are, plus decrease aerosols and more warming? We're going to reach 2 degrees Celsius easily by 2030. Easily. Global average temperature. Regionally different all over, but it's still going to be held. The northern hemisphere is going to be, to put it bluntly, fucked. There's nowhere safe in the North American continent, China, and Europe. You tell me to have hopium and not sit in the middle of the road and say it's game over, and there's going to be a lot of people coming out on social media saying about how these all articles say the same thing, and they have a little footnotes version at the end. They all say the same fucking thing. But we can't give up hope. We have to do something now. And I look around me, and I don't see shit being done. All right? Nobody's even batting an eye. No one gives a fuck. Okay? No movement, no action, no votes, we have nothing. How do you feel? There's no one in my generation in their 30s that are actually in Congress, actually making changes, besides Alexandria Cortez, which is a little bit older than me, and she's funded by corporations too. Can't trust her. There's nobody representing us, and you're telling us, oh, don't feel hopeless. It starts with action. And I see Trump flags flying down the street. Are you in a fucking, what kind of fog do you live in? This is reality. Okay? Nothing is being done, and we're accelerating off the cliff. And aerosols, as dramatic as they may be in terms of warming, radiative forcing, that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's way more than that in store for us. All the other feedback loops, too. It's insanity. Okay? Thanks for your support. Donations help. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Doom Wizard out. Peace.